Hello, welcome to the Grow Your Wealthy Mindset podcast, where it is all about helping amazing physicians just like you create a wealthy life free from burnout and with the financial security to practice medicine on your own terms. I'm your host, Dr. Elisa Chiang. Today's episode is a third in a three-part series where I was a guest on the Dare to Dream podcast with Dr. Weili Gray. This recording was made 2 years ago in October of 2021. And if you haven't listened to the first two episodes, I encourage you to listen to those as well. There are a few details that have been edited due to changes in the last 2 years. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to another episode of the Dare to Dream Physician podcast. I'm so excited today to continue part 3 of a 3-part conversation with our guest, Dr. Elisa Chiang. She is an MD, PhD, an ophthalmologist and oculoplastic surgeon. She's also a life coach and founder of Grow Your Wealthy Mindset. If you missed the last 2 weeks' episodes, please add those to your queue after you're done listening to this one. In episode 24, we talk about her journey as a medical student, a graduate student, a resident, fellow, and attending, the struggles she had along the way, and how she was able to change her mindset and find transformation and contentment without changing any of her circumstances yet. She did eventually decide to change her job, but that was really the icing on the cake after she changed her mindset. And in episode 25, we talk about how our society as a whole views money as a taboo subject, and how if we dare to open up a dialogue about money and be more transparent with each other about money and be willing to learn about money, we can stop feeling frustrated, helpless, stuck, all those negative emotions around money, and start really looking at money more objectively, that it's just a tool that doesn't have power over us. And the other part is mindset is as important as the numbers, because somebody may have an astounding amount of money in their bank, yet still not feel secure, still not feel like they have enough, still feel worried about money. So episode 25 is about growing a wealthy mindset and how that can contribute to finding more joy and fulfillment in our lives without yet changing the numbers in the bank. Today's episode is a continuation of that amazing discussion we were having on money, and I can't wait to share this with you. Enjoy.
When I talk about having scarcity around money, just the mindset that there's never enough money, or it's always going to be hard to have money or get money. You have to work hard for money. Those are the concepts around people who just have a scarcity mindset around money, as opposed to abundant mindset about money is, well, I can always earn more money. There's always enough money. I have enough. Someone who has a scarcity mindset towards money, they could be making a ton of money, but their money could be, it just flows away from them just as soon as it gets to them. Or maybe they actually have a ton in their bank accounts, but they still just don't feel secure with that money. They think that having more money will give them security, but it's really your thoughts about security that actually give you security, right? So for some people, they think, oh, if I had $1 million, then I would be rich and everything would be great and secure. And then there are other people like, well, $1 million isn't enough. If I had $1 million at a 4% withdrawal rate, that's only $40,000 a year. How could I possibly live on $40,000 a year? Well, I can tell you there are a lot of families in the United States that live on $40,000 a year or even less. So, it's all really relative, but it's all goes back to our money mindset and how we think about money. And also, somewhat what we want in this world, right? There are people who love cars and they may buy like whatever Tesla model or whatever fancy Porsche or Ferrari. And that does bring them a lot of happiness because they just really love cars. And maybe that is an appropriate place for them to spend money. Whereas for me, I'm not a car person, so it would not make me happy to spend $100,000 on a fancy whatever car. But there may be some physicians who, as an attending physician, think, well, what would it look like if I drove a Honda Civic, which is actually what I do drive. And they feel like, well, no, I should have a BMW or an Audi or some kind of fancy luxury car to show off my attending status. But what's that really getting for them? If you're purchasing something just to, what's that phrase? Living up with the Jones?
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're just trying to keep up with the Jones, I mean, are you really going to be happy? Is that a good way to actually spend your money? So, I mean, those are all the things you can think about when it comes to money mindset.
Yeah, that's great. So the first example that you gave, that this money scarcity mindset, how there's never enough money, that there's never secure in your money. I mean, I can see situations where that would be true for somebody, right? Not necessarily when they become a physician, or I could think of a physician if they have $500,000 in loans with a high interest rate, maybe they would feel like that, even with a physician income. But how does one, depending on whatever their story that they're telling themselves, I'm thinking of the physician with the high loan burden, or maybe a physician that just came from a really poor family, right? That was their upbringing. They didn't really have food on the table. Is it really just their thoughts? Or I'm just really curious about what is the role of mindset in that? Should someone who currently has this high loan burden start having an abundance mindset? So tell me more.
Yeah. So debt is a neutral circumstance, right? So having, let's say what's the average debt on med school, like 200,000 now? Maybe it's even higher.
I think it's higher.
I know. I was like, I think it was 200,000 when I graduated. So
yeah.
It's probably like 300,000 now.
Yeah. I had about $250,000 in loans. And then a lot of that was at 6.8% interest, which is a big stress factor for me at the time.
Right. So, but that debt is still a neutral circumstance. And so, and actually to back up, there are a lot of times where we say like, we can't afford something, but is that really true? That's really just a thought, because who could afford $250,000 of debt from med school, right? But we take on debt for med school because we think that it's worthwhile. So the I can't afford something really goes more to a scarcity mindset, as opposed to I choose not to spend on that, right? And that's more of an abundant, empowering mindset. Right. So when you understand that everything you do is a choice and you're choosing not, and maybe you don't love that choice, but you're choosing not to buy one thing so that you can have the money to buy something else. And that might be that, you're choosing to buy something or not buy something that you really want because you're choosing that it's more important to have healthy food on the table and the rent paid and pay for the utilities. It also goes on to when you get a bill, you get the bill for your water bill, your electric bill. And some people, when they look at those bills, all the money's pouring out. That would be more of a scarcity mindset. But if you think about it, when your power goes out, you hate it, right? We are lucky to have clean running water that comes out of a tap. There was a time where that was a complete luxury, right? There are houses who only have one bathroom because the bathroom was such a luxurious thing to have, even mansions back in the day. And now we're at a point where we have tons of bathrooms because water and plumbing is plentiful. So if we actually think about when we're paying our water bill or electricity bill, I am so happy that for this amount of money, I can flip a switch and have electricity. I can be up all night if I want to and still have light instead of having to be by candlelight. I have internet, I have my computer, I can get on the World Wide Web because I have electricity. And if your local electric company suddenly decided, nope, we're not selling you electricity anymore, you got to figure it out, we'd be really unhappy. We want to pay that utility bill. And so even thought changes like that of realizing, yes, I want to pay for this electric bill. I want to pay the water bill. I love that I have running water in my home. That also builds that more abundance mindset instead of that, money's just running from me everywhere and all these bills to pay. So I think that abundance versus scarcity mindset goes in multiple ways. So yes, you may have a lot of debt, but you can also look at, do you have food on the table? Do you have a roof over your head? And like I said before, I used to read those books on gratitude and think like this is all fluff and this isn't helpful. But looking more in that mindset, if we actually realize how much we're choosing on spending our money and where we want to spend it, then we may realize I really don't need that Louis Vuitton purse. But when I see the joy that my child has when they get their birthday gift, then I'd rather spend my money there. And while the huge amounts of debt in medicine, does feel like it's crushing, working as a physician, generally we can find ways to pay off that debt, and it may take a long time. And so that also means that we need to find ways to be happy in practicing medicine, because I do think it'd be a lot harder if you go through medical school, have all that debt, and then realize I don't want to practice as a physician. I want to be a high school teacher. then it's probably going to be a lot harder to pay off that $250,000 of debt. But if that's really what you want to choose, you may be able to still make it work for you. I don't want to say that nothing's impossible, but that is where more financial planning can really help you make the decisions on where to go. But if you run through the model, it's almost never useful to have really negative thoughts, because when you have negative thoughts and have negative feelings, you're usually not doing actions that are helpful to getting a result that you actually want. So the result that you actually produce is probably not something that you actually want to have, right? Like when you're feeling down and depressed or frustrated, the kind of actions you take are not usually things to fix the situation. When you're feeling empowered, motivated, then you can actually take steps in order to fix whatever situation you're in and get the kind of results you want.
I love that. Wow. As you're saying these things, so many things have come up for me. And so I don't even know where to start. I was getting light bulb moments as you're saying, just giving same situation that there is a fixed amount of money coming in each month and you can't buy everything, which actually, no matter what your income is probably true. And you can choose the way you look at it. You can choose the thought, which may be the default thought for some people that, oh, I can't have this. Everybody else can have this, but I can't have this. And this is pretty terrible. I just don't have enough. Or you could also choose to say, well, I get to choose where I put this money coming in. Maybe something as basic as electricity or clean water, but I get this. I have the money to pay for this. And now I get electricity and water. And that makes such a big difference. And because it actually, as you're saying that, I started thinking about my grandmother. And this is a story from probably like the 70s or 80s in communist China. I wasn't even born yet, but I hear these stories from my mom, So in communist China, my grandmother and most families would get ration food. I mean, people had very little money, if any. They had some currency, but mostly it was just stuff that was rationed from the government. So there's a ration of food that they get every week. And my grandmother, she had 4 kids. It's a fairly big family, 6-person family. And she would share the food with people. When she would get the ration at the beginning of the week, she would just give it out to other families that may actually have less food. And she was very happy about it. She liked doing that. And of course, at the end of the week, they always ran out of food. I think that was a gift of hers that one was that she was very generous, but I think that generosity came from an abundance mindset. I mean, they survived. I don't think her kids were malnourished or anything. They were fine. But basically, she felt like there was an abundance, like, wow, I have this food that I got rationed. And there are other families that are actually more in need than they are because maybe they got a smaller portion. And so I think if my grandmother could have had that abundance mindset back in the day when nobody had any money in communist China and the government just gave you these ration portions, that I could adopt this mindset. The other thing that resonated with me is you had mentioned that if you're a physician, but then you hate your job and you have this big loan burden, that could potentially be a problem. And as you said that, I said, oh, I remember feeling that way. I was a resident at the time, but I was looking at my $250,000 loan kind of accumulating with the 6.8 interest for a big portion of it. And actually, to be honest, I was not looking at it, but I knew that it was accumulating. I didn't want to look at it because it was too painful. And I had a tough time during residency because we had a baby during my intern year. I was definitely a burned out resident at one point. I remember going in for the call shift and there's nothing, I had a wonderful program. I love the people I worked with and I actually love what I do. It was just the demands of both having a young kid and being a resident. I just remember looking at the cafeteria workers and I thought, wow, I want to be like them. Why can't I be a cafeteria worker? Like, why do I have to be a resident? It's like any job but my job would be like, I could, work at Starbucks or I could be a farmer because I would go to the farmers markets and buy food from them. I stayed in medicine, but there was definitely a period where I felt really, really desperate. Like, I don't know what to do. This is hopeless. I'm stuck. I felt trapped and stuck. I wanted to finish my residency. The achiever in me was like, you don't quit anything. And I'm so privileged that I'm in a great residency that there's no reason not to finish it. But then the other part of me was like, okay, I'm really struggling in life and I'm in survival mode every single day. In the end, I was able to get out of that burnout mode. But I think that there are physicians that can feel that way, right? Even now, as they're listening, even attending physicians where they feel very very stuck in their jobs and wondering like, maybe I could just be a cafeteria worker, or maybe I could work at Starbucks, but I wouldn't be able to pay off my loans. What do I do? I think I would say my message for them is you have options, right? There are so many options and you don't have to stay there. Please don't stay there, because we know that there is a very high epidemic of physician suicides too. And I think that we have to take our mental health really seriously and not to tell stories to ourselves that we're stuck, because nobody is ever stuck. They certainly should go get help, but you are not stuck.
Yeah. And this is where language is important, right? Like you can think, oh, I have to see 30 patients today, or I get to see 30 patients today. There are 30 people that I can help today. And it may still feel overwhelming to have, that many patients in your schedule, but, there are other doctors who might see 30 patients in your schedule and be like, oh, at least it's not 40, or at least it's not 50, right? I mean, I do know doctors who see 50, 60, even 70 patients a day. So, and some people actually, I know one physician where like 70, 80 patients a day is their norm, and they're happy because that means that that's all the patients they're helping. And honestly, also, that's all the income they're getting, right? The more patients we see, typically the more production we'll have. But yeah, it's physician suicide, I think, is a real problem. I think a lot of people don't realize just how high the physician suicide rate is. And it's super sad. There was a physician who committed suicide, was found in their office dead in my hospital. I think it was last year.
Yeah. And just to be clear, we're not saying here that coaching or changing your mindset is going to fix everything. It depends on the individual and the situation that they're in. It may be right for them to seek psychiatric care or see a therapist. And coaching is certainly not the same thing as therapy.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're saying that. Yes, definitely. And, coaching may still help you even if you're getting therapy. I think they play different roles. But yes, some people need therapy, and there's no shame in getting therapy. There's no shame in getting help. And I think that's another message that we have to have in the physician community. I think so many physicians are afraid of getting psychiatric help, and we need to make mental health a norm and a priority, right? Like, I think my mind is my most powerful resource, and to lose that is really in a way to lose everything.
Yeah. I didn't really necessarily plan to talk about physician suicide, but I will say that money can be such a powerful subject, right? And I think that's why it's taboo in our society, because it can just bring up so many different things. And I shared my story of how I at one point felt really desperate about my student loans, and I felt like I was stuck and in many ways hopeless. And I was fortunate because I was able to get out of that place. And actually part of what helped me was actually just learning more about finances. So I was able to take more control of my personal finances. But I think the other part is that there are many tools to help us. One is changing our mindset, right? Changing something as simple as shifting our mindset from I don't have enough to there's actually a lot going around and I don't have unlimited resources in my bank, but what I do have, I get to choose what I do with that. But it may also be across the spectrum, right? Some people may feel so hopeless about it. And that actually may be part of the symptom of their depression or something more serious where they may need to seek psychiatric care. And that is all okay.
Yeah, it is. And just to go off your point again, some people probably don't talk about money because it is a depressing subject to them because they do have that scarcity mindset. But then them not talking about money, they're never going to learn the personal finance and how to invest and how to actually make what money they have grow and make their money situation better.
Yeah, right. By avoiding it, which I was certainly trying to do as a resident, that stress doesn't go away. It's something that still is a burden and eats away at someone.
Right. So when we hide away from something that's stressful or burdensome to us, then we can't actually think of well, how are we going to solve this problem? And for some people, the problem of, not having enough money might actually be just learning a little bit about personal finance and figuring out where their money is going and how they're spending it and where they can make changes in that in order to actually have enough.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue to maybe having you explain to the listeners what's one way that they can do to start if they are in that position where they feel overwhelmed or just scared, fearful, or in pain when they think about money. What do you suggest? What should their next steps be?
It depends on where they're at and where they want to go. Obviously, I'd love to coach anyone who wants to work on their money mindset. But if they don't feel like they want to get into coaching, they want to start something smaller, just starting reading or podcasts, whatever kind of medium they like to consume the most. So there are lots of great books out there, and there's a lot of great blogs. There's a lot of great podcasts, and just embracing the education of money mindset, and how to manage money. And I think it all just starts with education, because when you don't know about something, you fear it a lot more, right? There's a lot of fear that is wrapped around the unknown. And so if we can, shine some light on the subject, I think that's a really great starting point.
Yeah. And that just reminds me, because my goal is to help physicians dare to dream and imagine the life that they want, and then to go out and get that as soon as possible. And I think money is a big obstacle for most people, because people will often, they don't even let themselves dream because they're like, oh, but I don't have money. I can't do that because I don't have the money to. And I think that if we can start working on our money mindset, and I'm not saying that once we work on our money mindset, then they're going to be able to get everything they want, but it really does help them. I think that really will be empowering for them, including in pursuing their dream life. Because we talked about it in our pre-interview chat, how both of us are familiar with the FIRE movement, the financial independence, retire early, that term, and how when I was a resident, that sounds totally undoable. And I'm certainly not financial independent right now, but even being introduced to that concept after I became an attending, I think was actually empowering, because you see on the internet space, some physicians that have become financially independent at a fairly young age, in their 40s. And I think, okay, there are physicians, if they can do it, why can't I try to do it? And I'm not saying that everybody has to pursue it, but I think also that FIRE movement is a mindset as well, because it's not like they're doing anything magical. There is some math involved, but some of it is just prioritizing what's important to you. Like you were saying, is a Tesla important to you, or is your freedom and not having to work 80 hours a week, even as an attending, is that important to you? And if you figure out, well, what is important to me, that can also help you redirect your energy and redirect your money and redirect even your earning. And so I think that learning about money, learning about personal finance, starting to figure out what is your money mindset, right? I think that will really help people in their personal growth journey.
Yeah. And I do want to say about the FIRE movement. So I really do think financial independence is great, empowers physicians to be able to live the life they want. But I'd like people to rethink the retire early and think more like, well, how can I make the practice of medicine such that I enjoy it? You don't have to retire early. I mean, some people, that's what they want to do, and that's great. And that is their choice. But I just want to have physicians open up. What does it really mean once I'm financially independent? I can do whatever I want. Well, now I can practice medicine the way I want. And I say this because back in grad school, when I was burned out, I basically started looking about finance, reading about finance, and getting into real estate investing with this idea of FIRE, even before FIRE really became this well-known term. Because my idea is I don't want to be stuck. I want to build up enough wealth so that I can just live my life and I don't have to necessarily do something I don't want to do, because that's how I felt in grad school, that I was doing this, that I didn't really want to be doing it. But now I've realized that to back up, part of my coming back to Cleveland, not only did I have a great friend base here, but this is also where I did that real estate investing. And so I knew I wanted to get back into real estate investing, and I have gotten back to real estate investing in Cleveland. And part of that motivator was that FIRE movement. I've been following the physician FIRE since its beginning. But I realized at some point that I had some arrival fallacy, that once I got to financial independence and I could retire early, then I will have arrived. But I think as physicians, we all have a little bit of a arrival fallacy, right? We think as a med student that residency will be better, residency fellowship will be better, and fellowship, oh, when we're attending, will be great. And then, at least for me, when I got to be attending, I'm like, is this it? At some point with coaching, I actually realized that, well, once I got to financial independence, and if I just retired early, I think I'd also feel like, well, is this it? And so now I'm really rethinking, well, okay, life is what we do every day. And I don't want to just wait. Obviously, I'm still going to invest my money wisely and grow it. But Part of my going to this new part-time job, I came to the realization of, well, I want to live the life I want to live now. I don't want to just keep trying to earn more money to invest more so that I can retire early. I'm making a conscious decision where going part-time, obviously, I'm going to earn a lot less and I'm going to have less to invest. And that's going to push out my timeline where I will be completely financially independent and could potentially retire early. But I'm working toward making every day closer to my ideal life now, instead of, okay, once I get to financial independence, then I can make it my ideal life. And part of me also realizes is that I have this number in mind that once I have this net worth that I can then retire. But that is also mindset, right? Because maybe when I reach that number, I'm going to be, well, what if this happens to the economy? I need more of a cushion. And once you leave medicine, if you stop practicing for a few years, it becomes really difficult to come back to practice. But if you practice part-time, you can do that indefinitely. And so I really want to encourage physicians who are thinking the FIRE movement to think about, well, how could I make the practice of medicine what I actually want to do in my everyday? And how can I work every day to make my practice closer to that practice?
Yeah, what you shared is a beautiful example of how money mindset and pursuing the dream life intertwines, because that's exactly it, right? If we're doing a certain thing, so like FIRE is, okay, I want freedom, financial independence, retire early. I want freedom. If I have enough money, so I don't have to work anymore, I don't have to worry about working. I have that freedom of the income freedom. But where the money mindset comes in is, well, when is enough enough? What is enough, right? Because especially if you retire early, there could be 50 years ahead of you that you have to fund. And there could be much higher inflation rates. There could be market crashes. And yeah, we do the calculations with the model saying, okay, this should be all okay, but there's still a leap of faith there, which is fine. And people do it. But then the question is, okay, so now you're retired. Well, then what? What are you retiring to? Is that your dream life? Is your dream life to escape medicine? Because a lot of people may be just thinking, I just need to escape medicine because there's so much pain right now. But it could be, maybe it's the pain like you were describing, like maybe it's the system that you're in, right? Like maybe if you practice as a ophthalmologist in a more efficient practice where you feel like you have more control of your schedule, and it may not even need to be part-time, but that person could be much happier. And so it's also just imagining what are the elements that we really want in our dream life. If it's just having more control over your schedule and maybe, starting work a little bit later or earlier or ending earlier, if that's all it is, you don't have to quit medicine to find that. Those options are out there, but you have to know that's what you want. And you may even be able to negotiate that if you feel strongly about that's what I want. And even if it doesn't exist yet, you might be able to create something like that. And so I love how you use that example as how money intertwines with that, because it's true. I think it's great. I mean, both you and I feel the same way about the importance of physicians learning about finances and mastering their finance, no matter what.
So when a lot of people talk about, I can't afford it. So I remember even during med school, grad school, residency, I love international travel. And I always actually made a point to continue to travel. And I did a lot of internationally traveling during all those years, even when I didn't really have that much money. I want to bring that up for twofold. One is that I think in doing a lot of the international travel, I went to third world countries. I went to places where people had so much less. And I actually spent some time living with a family in Inner Mongolia in their 2-bedroom, or not even a bedroom, like 2-room house. And I mean, they did not have running water. There was just a shed out back where you did your business. And I think doing that traveling really exposed me to just how much we have in the United States. And it does bring some level of gratitude in coming back. And the other reason I want to bring that up is that, yeah, even as a med student, grad student, I still found the means to be able to do these trips. It doesn't have to be expensive, but you can have great experiences at not such a price tags. I remember talking to some other friends, other med students trying to convince them to go with me somewhere. And they're like, oh, I can't afford that. And yet they went and did a ski vacation in Vail. I'm pretty sure that ski vacation in Vail cost just as much, possibly even more than whatever trip I was trying to get them to go on with me too. So
yeah, I think that's such a good reminder. And you know what's so funny? this was, I think, a college trip, but I went to Inner Mongolia too. I love that area. And I remember we lived in a yurt. I didn't get to stay with the family because I traveled with a group of other college students, but I can picture exactly what you're saying about how they really didn't have much. But you know what? They were some of the happiest people I ever met. She said, "Oh, come back and visit me." I didn't know I was going to be able to come back, but she's like, "Oh, but when you come back, we'll slaughter a lamb or whatever it is that they do in their culture to celebrate." And she was just so happy to connect with another human being. And actually, that was one of the moments where I thought, I want to be a doctor. I want to, go into medicine because I love connecting with people in the purest way. Like you were saying, I was, especially in the first 5 years of my attending career, I'm not at financial independence yet, but I focus so much on, okay, let me see if I can invest this. Every little amount of money that came in, I want to invest this so I can reach FIRE. And I got to the point where I reached one milestone, even though it wasn't FI. I was like, oh, this is one milestone. And I just remember looking at my spreadsheets. I don't really feel happy. One is, like you said, people don't really talk about money. So aside from my husband, I didn't really have a lot of people to share this milestone with. And then two, even when I did share with my one friend who I felt comfortable sharing with, it was anticlimactic. She was happy for me, but I'm like, this is just a number on a piece of paper. I think I was certainly happier the moment of when I was traveling in Inner Mongolia and really connecting with this woman and her daughter, who's from a completely different culture, different part of the world. But yet she was human and I was human and we were able to connect. And that's actually what I love about medicine. I love being able to connect with people who may be from a completely different walk of life, and I still enjoy it. So I am not so much focused on FIRE anymore. I'm more just focused on what can I build now? How can I design my life now that I just want to live it forever, right? Or as long as I can still do it. And that also brings up another point, which is that we don't know, right? We could plan for FIRE in maybe 5 years or 10 years, but we don't know if that day is going to come. Even if we have the resources, then we might not be in the same health condition that we are, or we may not even be alive, right? Because we can't predict the future. And so I do have more of the, let me live more in the moment and let me enjoy the moment. And yeah, I do want to invest. And I'm not saying to just go out and spend everything and say, seize the moment, but I think there should be a balance. And so thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, I have loved our conversation today. It's been great.
You can find Dr. Elisa Chiang at growyourwealthymindset.com.
You can sign up for my email list there, or you can even sign up to chat with me. I'm also on social media. So I'm also on Instagram and YouTube. Probably the easiest ways to get there is just to go to my website and then click on the links.
Great. So you have a YouTube channel where you have lots of content on there talking about money mindset and tidbits about personal finances. So thank you so much again for coming on. And I so loved our conversation about money and life and how people can build that dream life.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. This has been great. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you could share it with your friends and colleagues. And now for the disclaimer. I am not a certified financial planner, accountant, or attorney, and nothing I say should be construed as professional investment, tax, or legal advice. This show is primarily for your education and entertainment. I am a physician, but I'm probably not your physician. So if you need any medical advice, please contact your own physician. Thank you.